Well, I know you. Huh.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Selden. I'm the president of the Montessori Foundation. We're a small nonprofit school consulting organization. We also do a lot of work with families, and I'm an author working with family life all over the world. We work with Montessori schools. We also work with all kinds of other schools, and we've been doing this since 1932. Um, I'd like to introduce my colleague, and for many of you, someone you already know probably better than me, Clint Loesch, who has a wonderful company called AIMS, which stands for Automated
You
Independent.
got it wrong again, Tim.
Automated. Do your thing, man.
No, it's admissions inquiry and marketing software.
Right.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. And yeah, we have all-in-one marketing and admissions software for schools and doing everything from the advertising to even all the way down to collecting tuition. So, and everywhere in between. And so it's truly an all-in-one where, now schools can finally not have to duct tape software together. They can finally get some data in regards to what are the marketing initiatives that are actually producing enrollment outcomes. And especially when it comes to advertising, we're going to talk about advertising today. We have a really cool built-in AI powered ad platform that allows you to run ads easier than ever. And it reduces costs significantly, especially on a cost per click basis and a cost per conversion basis. It's really interesting right now, this time of year, because we've had schools using it now for over a year now. So we're really getting some cool data across a lot of schools about like, hey, what does it actually cost to get a tour? Like, what does it cost to get an open house registration? What's working better? Google versus Meta. How should I budget? So those are, I think, that's obviously the topic for today's session. I think it's, as we're maybe reaching the end of what we'll call admission season, heading into the summer here in a month or so. How I think we should also talk about that, right? How should you plan your budget into this? Should you even advertise in the summer? Summer camp aside, I'm running like right now for a bunch of schools. I know a lot of schools are running summer camp campaigns, but should you run admission focused campaigns? So I'll share with you a tool that I think comes in handy in terms of how you should actually allocate your budget throughout the year. It doesn't have to be flat, $1,000 every single month. You can ramp it up, ramp it down. I'll give you hopefully some good insight in terms of where you should do that. So anyway, that's what our platform does, and it leads in nicely to our discussion about advertising. So is everybody on here? Anybody not advertising right now? A little bit, little advertising here and there.
It's making a sign like maybe a little bit.
No.
I
Yeah,
will,
I mean,
I
go
will,
ahead, Tim.
I mean, everyone says word of mouth. And that's great if you have a long, long, long list of people who are desperate to get in your school. And by the way, a waiting list doesn't count because waiting lists that don't have, thousands of dollars on the table at risk is just a sheet of expression of interest. Like maybe if you happen to have an opening and the stars align when you have an opening, I might come to your school. We're talking about the bottom line is, schools need to work hard. And in a changing time, changing political climate, social climate, economy, we have to work hard to make sure that we find the right families and we keep our enrollments full. And if you don't need to do that, that's great. There are schools like that, but most schools have to spend money and they have to spend time. And why the Montessori Foundation works with Clint is I have a little lab school that uh, needed a service. I've worked with a lot of companies over the years. I met Clint through a mutual friend and he blew me away. And Clint, I just want to say, in my opinion, you are not selling software, you're selling a marketing agency and consulting. You have expertise that I admire as a senior consultant with big schools and small schools for all my life. And I just think that what we try to do on this free weekly webcast is obviously get to know people because that's again how you this is exactly what you should be doing with families in your community, is doing things that are low risk and free and making friends. And that's how you ultimately find people who are looking for something just like you. That's what Clint's doing. That's what the foundation's doing. We're obviously looking to find schools and school leaders who need people just like us to help them solve specific problems where we're a good fit. But we also like sharing knowledge and expertise. And that's what I appreciate about you, Clint.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Tim. And um, and thinking about advertising, what you said, right? Which is, yeah, word of mouth, like word of mouth, it's gonna probably make up at least 80% of your enrollment. And then for maybe it's 80, maybe it's 90. It's how do we fill in that gap? And look, there's a lot of things you can do, right? So you can do search engine optimization. SEO is great. There's pros and cons to it, right? It takes a little bit of time, but obviously if you're ranking at the top of Google as people are searching for private schools near me, awesome. Um, yes, you could do things like billboards and print magazines, right? You can run ads there. It all works, but really, unless you have an unlimited budget, it's a matter of opportunity costs, right? If we spend $1,000 here, maybe we can't spend $1,000 there. So, I think what I want to talk about today is certainly like what's working now, what I'm seeing across a lot of schools. So I'll just give you some insights, what I'm seeing working best. And if I were to start an advertising campaign today, what would I do? So, we can talk through that. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Tim, can you allow me to share my screen? I think this might be a good place to start the conversation.
Sure. Hang on a second. I'm just looking for where the new and improved. Here we go. Okay, here it is. They have changed Zoom again, so everything is different.
They're just like Facebook. Every time you log into Facebook, something has changed. Okay. Has anybody ever seen me put this up here before? Has anybody ever seen this before? A Google Trends chart? So this is a nice little tool that I like to use every once in a while, just as like a reminder, and also just it's good to talk about. And this little chart, which we'll talk about, can give you a good idea about how you should manage your ad spend throughout the year. So what this is telling us, you can see here, private school. This is according to Google. This is Google Trends. This is showing what how popular or how often are people searching for private schools throughout the year. So like right now, we are actually here towards the end here, and then really if we work left to right, we're right here. And so what you can see here is, so let's actually work backwards. This is the holidays. This is December. As you can see, interest in private school, search interest declines, right? Holidays, people aren't necessarily searching for schools in December. Now, it doesn't go to zero, right? It's not like this goes down to zero. It's just not as popular as the moment we get into the new year, you can see January, February, March, April to where we are now. Interest is at a peak, right? And that makes sense. It's enrollment time. Families are deciding, do I want to stay at my school, go to another school, looking for new schools, whatever it might be. This is enrollment time. And that's leading us over to here, which shows by the time we get to May is when we see a dip, right? So end of the school year into the summer. But then what you'll see here is that actually at the end of July, we see it start to go close to a peak again as you go into August and September. And then through the fall, it stays pretty steady. And then, as I mentioned, you get into the holidays and Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then you have your decline. So why do I point this out? One is this can help determine how you should manage your budget, especially with Google Ads. So like right now, if you thought, well, it's not, even if this doesn't match your admission season, what you need to know is that this is how families are looking at schools and when they're looking at schools. So like right now is a really good time to be running ads. As you get to Memorial Day, right, end of the year, yeah, maybe if you were doing $1,000 a day in ads, maybe we scale it back a little bit, 500 or not $1,000 a day. That'd be a lot of advertising on a monthly basis, $1,000 a month, or maybe you scale back to $500 a month, and then as you get through July, you start ramping it back up. Any questions on this? Does this surprise anybody to see this? Anything jump out at you?
One thing that jumps out at me is that Google is great for when someone is searching. And as you point out, in in the month of June, the number of people who are inquiring tends to drop down.
Yep.
Facebook is one of those things that can trigger someone into realizing they need to do something. And there are a lot of people that are like that. And if you have the money, I would say that Facebook advertising or anything, whether it's free guerrilla marketing strategies, free public events, billboard ads, anything that gets people's attention works well during periods when people are not actively remembering, oh my God, I got a problem to solve. I've got to find a school. So you can trigger interest by doing that kind of thing. And it's a good idea to do it year round, frankly.
See, let me pull this up. Some of you that were on with us a few weeks ago may have seen us talk about this. Um, okay, I think this is good. If you know the answer, don't give it away, don't spoil it. But there's an old marketing rule, and this has been forever, is that somebody needs to see your offer, your ad, your messaging 5 to 7 times before they engage with you. So real quick, since we have a nice little crowd here, let's do a quick, feel free to put in the chat. Do you think it's higher or lower now? And if you want to take a guess at the number, go ahead. Higher or lower? Do you think so? It used to be 5 to 7. What do we think it is now? Toss it in the chat. Higher, lower? Anybody want to venture a guess? Tiffany said higher, 35. Pam said the same. Catherine, you said lower. All right, so we've got everyone. We got lower, we got the same, we got higher. Anybody want to be the tiebreaker? All right. So there were two companies that did this study. They came up with different numbers, but they are all the same concept, which is someone needs to see your offer now 33 times. Now that's according to a company called C3 Metrics. HubSpot did a similar study and they said 11. So let's say anywhere between 11 and 33 times. The point is that because we're all just so inundated with ads and messaging and social media and they just have to see it more, right? So I bring this up because a question that I get a lot is, okay, here's my budget. Should I spend it on Google or should I spend it on Facebook or should I spend it on YouTube or who was I talking to the other day? They asked about Snapchat. It's the first time I ever had a conversation about Snapchat. I don't know anybody advertising on Snapchat, by the way. Not recommending anybody do it, but they're all out there, right? As a channel. And so I bring this up because, in thinking about what's working right now, schools that are doing both anecdotally I've seen do the best, right? They have Google ads running, they have Facebook ads running. It is good. We can always attribute, what we're going to call a conversion. Somebody takes an action, fills out a form, and we could say, hey, they did that on Facebook. There's a good chance they were influenced, and you can do some data around this. It's called assisted attribution. Maybe they went to Google, they searched for private schools near me, they found your school, and then they didn't do anything, and then they're flipping through Facebook, they see your ad again there, and then they decide, oh yeah, I'll click them now and I'll fill out the form, and that ad conversion is attributed to Facebook, but Google played a role. So in general, if you can be on more platforms than one, that's ideal. Now, if your budget's less than $500, I would say, yeah, you're gonna have to pick one, otherwise you're gonna get spread too thin. But if you get into close to 1,000 plus, you could spread out to multiple platforms. So I would say that's one thing. If we were gonna chalk that into like what's working now, omni-channel. So I started to put a document together that we're gonna talk about, like what's working now. What's working now? One, omni-channel. How can we be everywhere all at once? Facebook ads, Instagram ads, Google search ads, maybe Google display ads. That's my next one, which is Google Performance Max. Does anybody know what Google Performance Max is? Google Performance Max so what's most common right now for people to do advertising is Google search, right? So if you type in, let's make sure we're all on the same page. I type in private schools near me, right? And then we get these sponsored ads. So sponsored, 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 sponsored. We got 4 sponsored ads. These are Google search ads, right? And then if I go to, let's go to weather.com. Let's go check out the weather in the area. Let's see. Do they have banner ads anywhere here? Is it showing any banner ads? Here we go. You got a banner ad, right? And this is a Google banner ad, right? So I go to weather.com and I've got Google ads here. So I bring this up because what Google Performance Max is utilizing all the Google channels for your campaign. So if you say, I have an open house campaign, you can run a Performance Max campaign and you run ads on Google search, on anywhere where you could do display ads, so like a weather.com, ESPN. Your ads could be there. They could look like a blog post. They could be in Gmail. They could be in Google Maps. You're placing ads everywhere. The advantage to that is you get maximum brand awareness. Potential disadvantage is you're giving a lot of control over to Google to place your ads where they think you're going to perform the best. Because one big advantage with Google search is that, like Tim had mentioned, is that they are intent-based ads, meaning somebody typed in private schools near me and your ad popped up, so they're actively searching. Unlike Meta, we call those disruption ads, right? Somebody may or may not be interested in the school and your ad pops up. But Google search, they're searching for ads and your ad pops up. However, a lot of schools right now that are using our platform are seeing a lot of great success with Google Performance Max. As just a rule of thumb, I would say this is a longer term, meaning if you said I'm going to run a campaign for 30 days, I probably wouldn't run a Google Performance Max campaign. You need a little bit more time for it to optimize, to find the best placements. But if you said, hey, we can give this at least like 3 months, then Google Performance Max does pretty well because it'll auto optimize itself over that time. So give it at least 3 months. And it also falls in line with the concept of kind of being everywhere all at once because you're using all of Google's properties. All right. What else are we seeing perform? Any questions on this, by the way? Google, anybody doing Google Performance Max?
I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, it's I'm gonna see. I was gonna pull it up on the side, but I don't want to take up anybody's time pulling up. Yeah, Google Performance Max. This is another way to run Google campaigns across all of Google's properties because Google owns pretty much everything. They got a lot of properties. And again, I didn't even say YouTube. YouTube is included in that too. So if you've got a video, you put the video in there, and then you have your search, and then you have a display ad, and then you've got somebody goes into their Gmail and your ad is there. You're everywhere. So it's pretty cool. And I'm seeing that work really, really well. Other thing I'm seeing work really well right now are what are called Facebook lead forms. Anybody here know what a Facebook lead form is? So think about an ad that you see on Facebook, right? We probably all clicked on one of these at once. You click on an ad and you don't actually go anywhere. A form pops up right in your app. And maybe it's auto-populates based upon your Facebook profile information, your name, your email. Now you can ask other questions in there, but a Facebook lead form, it kind of takes the place of a landing page where instead of clicking your ad and you go to your website or a dedicated page, there's an intermediary step with a lead form. Now, there are pros and cons to leads form. So let me just point these out. I'm not saying like everybody should do this because you do need to be a little bit careful with them. The pros, quantity. You should be able to get a lot of, well, quote unquote, new family leads through Facebook lead forms. That's also a con. Ease of submission, which leads to lower quality or not right fit families, right? So because it is so easy to fill it out, sometimes what you'll find is, hey, we're getting a lot, but they're not showing up for the tour they registered for. They said they wanted to call, they're not picking up their phone, their email doesn't work. Like there is that potential. So you just have to keep a close eye on it. But you could get a really nice campaign that if it's set up the right way, You're using some conditional logic where you can set that in the form about what's a lead and what isn't a lead. Um, I'm personally seeing a lot of great success with lead forms where the cost per lead is lowest, right? So you could run, for every $100 you spend. So if you spend $1,000 and it's costing you $30 per lead, you could end up getting 30, 40 new family leads every single month. That's a lot. And as long as, you're keeping an eye and the numbers are looking good and it's something that, we help schools with, then this can be really, really advantageous. And I should also mention with it, just so everybody's aware how Meta's working these days, even if you're not running your own ads, just understand that like Meta right now wants control. They want control over who they run your ads to. 5 years ago, 4 years ago, if you wanted to run a Facebook campaign, it was a lot more complicated. You had to really choose your audience carefully and test audiences. Okay, I'm going to run ads to families that said they're interested in a private school and they're in a certain income level and they're living in homes that have a certain value. Like that's how people would run ads because, well, if they fit this criteria, then that means they could probably afford our private school, right? Just general rule of thumb. You actually shouldn't do that anymore. With how Facebook is running their ads now, or optimizing their ads, frankly, they're smarter than we are. Their algorithm, their machine learning, their AI is smarter than we are. What they're essentially saying in so many words is, we will find your audience. Don't worry about it. You just focus on your creative, right? If you want middle school and high school families, like let me give you an example. I'm working with a school right now on their ads. They're running an info session every single month. And they said, wow, we're a little bit light in middle school and high school. So we want to attract more middle school and high school families. We almost didn't do anything different with the campaign. When we did audiences, guess what audience we put in? We did what's called AI targeting now, or otherwise called broad targeting. We didn't even put in an audience to target. We just said, run an ad to anybody in this radius. We didn't say that if they have any kids they have, if they have kids of a certain age, interested in private school. We didn't do any of that. All we did was focus on the creative. In the ad itself, we said, hey, middle school and high school families, and then finish the rest of the text. The image had images of middle school and high school kids. So just by doing that, one, Facebook is smart enough to know who you want to target. And then this is where the pros of lead forms come in. So not to get too much into the weeds, but over the past several years, the browsers, your Safari, Google Chrome, you might have heard them like limiting cookies and what type of data they can get from you and all the tracking. So because on website tracking is not as good as it used to be before all the privacy and stuff like that, if somebody were to fill out a lead form though, that's direct data that goes back to Facebook. And that data is better. So assuming you're getting good quality, right fit families through that lead form, you're actually teaching Facebook, okay, this is a good fit. This is a good fit. Facebook's going to run more ads to people who look like those families. So Facebook lead forms actually does a really nice job of, assuming it's optimized properly, getting your ad in front of the right families. And if you notice that it's not getting in front of the right families, like, oh, a lot of these leads are coming in, you could either stop that campaign and try to rerun it to see if you could do better, or maybe you potentially have to stop it altogether. So you do have to pay attention to it. I'm not saying it's like foolproof, just go run Facebook lead forms and everything's going to be right with the world. But I am seeing a lot of campaigns this is working really, really well. Amanda, quick question. How to get started with Facebook lead forms? Very, very good question. Inside your ads manager, if you were to go to create it on your own, you go into your ads manager, you go to create your campaign, and at the ad set level, you get to choose your destination. Where do you want people to go from your ad? I want them to go to my website. That's your normal ad. You put in your URL, they go to your website. There's an option for what's called instant forms. You create your instant form right there. It'll come standard with first name, email, phone, and then you can add other questions in there. What's your grade level of interest? How do you want to connect with us? Are you looking for a tour? Are you looking to schedule a call? Do you want to start an application? What year of entry are you interested in? So you can ask those questions in addition. But yeah, you build it right inside Facebook. And like in our platform, since we're connected, you can actually build it right inside our platform as well. It makes it a little bit easier. And yeah, so that's how you do Facebook lead forms. And again, when we talk about what's working now, that's one of the things I'm seeing work pretty well. So, and the other thing along the lines of like Google search, these were just some of my notes that I wanted to think about as we're talking today. A lot of the campaigns that are running right now, at least through our platform, I'm seeing Meta produce more results. I'm not saying again that means don't do Google. I'm just seeing Google search. So let's put this in here. Google search getting more expensive. So I should call this what's working now slash observations. I'm seeing Google search get more expensive. Now, what qualifies as expensive? Just so everybody's aware how Google search works. If I were to go back to Google here, these are all ads, right? Nobody is paying for this ad right now. They only pay if I click. So I'm going to click on Moravian Academy. I just charge them probably a couple dollars. Apologies, Moravian Academy. I just charged them a couple dollars because I clicked. Now, so what you're wanting to figure out is what is the cost per click? Cost per click is determined by a variety of things. How good is your ad? Google will penalize you if your ad like isn't very good, people aren't clicking on it, then your cost per click is going to skyrocket. It's also dependent upon competition. So I typed in private schools near me. As you can see, we've got 4 schools advertising here. That's telling you there's a bit of competition. And there's probably some ads at the bottom, maybe. Yeah, ads at the bottom too. 1, 2, 3, 3 more ads at the bottom. There's a lot of competition in my little general vicinity here outside the Philly area. So with more competition, that means more people bidding on keywords. That means the cost per click is going to be higher. And sometimes you don't know what the exact number is going to be until you start running. But I am seeing across the board, every area is different. I do still see schools that are like $1 cost per click or $2 cost per click. But I used to say on average, like if you could be under like $3, that's pretty good. I'm seeing a lot of schools now where the cost per click is like $5, $6, $7. It is definitely, I think, getting a little bit more expensive. So you're typically going to need probably a little bit larger of a budget on Google search to accommodate that. So if you said, look, my budget's $500, let's just do some back of the napkin math. Like my budget's just $500 and it's costing you, $5 per click. That means you're going to get 100 clicks in the month. And you hope that, let's just say on average, like a 2% conversion, like your $500 budget might lead to let's say that's for tours, 2 tours. And that's costing you $250 cost per tour. Again, it's actually not too bad in the grand scheme of things, but everything is like an opportunity cost. So I'm not saying not to do Google. What I am saying is just be aware that I'm just seeing cost per click going a little bit higher overall. So while I still like to do Google and Meta together, I'm definitely seeing your budget's going a little bit further. That if you set up the ads the right way, like Meta's doing better than I would even say it was performing last year at this time. So it's just getting a little bit more expensive. That's all. But they should it should I mean the pro with Google is again it's intent based, right? So you're only showing ads to people that are showing interest. All right. Anybody else that's running ads have any other observations? I'm going to get into messaging here in a second. That's where Tim, I'm certainly going to lean on you because us working together and seeing the ads you've written, and I've mentioned it before that your ad copy is some of the best I've seen. You still hold like the best performing ads I've seen on Facebook, and that's actually this messaging is actually becoming more and more important for all the things that I just mentioned before, which is if Facebook wants to take over your audience targeting and all they care about is how good your creative is, then you got to make sure that your creative is as good as it possibly can be, and you're testing creative. So we're going to get into messaging here in a second, but any questions, comments, concerns, anything what we've already talked about, or anybody else have any insights based upon the ads that they're running? what's working best for you guys.
So we just started with the Google ads, like literally, I would say probably a few weeks ago. And so we're
Okay.
very new at all of this. And I guess like one wondering I have is whether or not it just becomes like too much noise. So you have all these ads, even like with like Facebook, whenever, like I'm thinking about my own experience of going on the internet or Facebook, Instagram, and I see ads and like I immediately flip right through it because I don't want to
Yeah.
deal with
Yeah.
those products. So is there any concern that it might be too much noise in the market when it comes to advertising?
Tiffany,
I,
if I make
go ahead, Tim.
jump in, there's a couple of services, if you think about it, that you don't really think about until you need it. One of them would be, you know, obstetrician. Unless you're planning to have a baby or you discover you're pregnant, you're probably not out there looking, and maybe some people are, but the average person isn't. Another is funeral homes. Probably don't look until you need it. That's where Google comes in. So if you're a family and you make the decision that you want to find an early childhood program or a good private school or a faith-based school, Google is probably where you're going to go. But Facebook and billboards and radio ads and all kinds of things that we can do, they're designed to let people know that you exist and to hopefully enchant them. Now, everyone is trying to enchant everybody. And I think, Tiffany, that's what you're saying is you got to stand out from the noise. But I think a couple of things that I find very instructive for me. The first is Google ads are fascinating. I will type in something like the Haywood Jones Hotel or the Aardvark Montessori School. And I get a Google result from Google. And I click on the first link I see, and I don't realize it is not the place I was looking for. It's a sponsored ad instead of the organic ad that you would hope would come up. Now, ideally, none of us want to pay a dime for anything, right? We would like everything to happen without spending money. But most of it requires us to spend money because other people are trying to lure people away. So, whatever your school is, Tiffany, if someone Googles it or does a search for private schools or Catholic schools near me or whatever kind of school you are, there's a good chance there's someone else who's got a Google ad that will bring them right up to the top of the deck. And if you don't watch it, that's where people they go down that rabbit hole and they never even find you. And we see that all the time with Google because there's always someone trying to get it. Whereas Facebook ads are designed to try to make people entertained, enchanted, want to look into you. And frankly, as you know, all these different experts say, you've got to tell people you exist and tell them a little bit about the challenge that they're facing and the way you could help them solve that challenge. Probably 10 times, 20 times, 30 times before they even know you were talking. And that's why there's all the noise. And so we've got to figure out a way, ideally, to grab their attention with the first shot. But then we have to keep making efforts again and again and again to keep them engaged until they're ready to call us up and schedule a tour, click a link and schedule a tour. We've got to develop a relationship with them.
Yep, and I want to piggyback on what Tim had said, and I'm going to share some examples and talk about. So, by the way, Tiffany, what you said is 100% correct. Like, there is a lot of noise out there. That's exactly why this stat is the way that it is now, because there's so much noise. I forget what the stat was. I got to find it. I'm going to put it in here. There was something like, 30 years ago, you might see 5,000 ads in a week. Now you see 5,000 ads a day. It's something like that, something crazy like that. And that's the truth, right? We're all we all see a million ads when we're flipping through the social feeds, and we pretty much skip right past them. However, what I lean on is the fact that You have to rely on the data, right? So what the data is showing, for one, well, let me say this. Let me take a step back. Probably one of the big mistakes that I see schools make when it comes to, especially with social media advertising, is they almost treat the social media ads, and I'm not saying you're or anybody else is doing this, but it's something I see very frequently, is that we treat digital ads like a billboard, right? So what I mean by that is, with a billboard, you get one shot. It's one message, it's one image, you put it out there and you hope it works. That is not how digital social media works. How the social media advertising and Google advertising, all of it works, is you want to put as much out there as possible. So you want to, so like this is why we have the platform that we have. So like, let me just give you an example. I hope this is okay, Tim, if I just show like Newgate's old campaigns, the ones that you wrote as well. Is what we're looking at here. Okay, I think this was just two. I know we ran a lot more than that. So we ran, so I'm going to take a look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different images. And there's at least 2 different variations of text. So usually at any given time, what we recommend is have 4 or 5 images per campaign and 4 or 5 pieces of text. So essentially what you've done is you've created 20 to 25 variations of ads that are going to go out there. And then what you're going to let the data play out and say is, look, some ads are going to work, some ads are not. You know, even when, like, if I were to build a campaign today, I can give you some decent templates that I know work, but you never know exactly what's going to work, but you just let the data tell you. So, and that's where we look at things like conversion rates and click-through rates and cost per click. I was just on a call with a school 2 hours ago, and we were going through their campaign. It wasn't this school, but we'll go into here in a second. And let me put some numbers out here. I'll just put it in here just so we can visually see it. They had 4 images running. I'm trying to remember this. Three of them were above 3.5% click-through rate. By the way, on average, I like to see 1 to 1.5% click-through rate on Meta. So we're going to talk Meta here for a second. But we can have the same conversation about Google. It doesn't really matter. 3 were above 3.5% click-through rate. 1 was below 1%. So, and then these 3 accounted for 95% of leads. Okay. So why do I point this out? Because when we think about noise, yeah, there's going to be some things that work and some things don't. So getting back to creative, it's really important to test creative. In Google, test headlines. You don't necessarily know what's going to work. You just want to put a lot out, frankly, you want to put a lot out there and let the data tell you, hey, whenever we use this headline, it works. Whenever we use this image, it works. Conversation I had, school that was running a lot of variations, and one of their ad variations had to do about financial aid. And guess what? The financial aid ad, it didn't work as well compared to the others. It wasn't bad, but it performance-wise, it did not perform as well as other ones. So that's where getting back to your creative right now is more important than ever. Because one, you do have to stand out, especially on social media. You are disrupting somebody. So you have to make sure your image is catchy and try a lot of different images. There are sometimes, like, let me go back to here. You see this image? This is a templated image that you use in Canva. Sometimes templated images where you put the image in there and you put some nice text, sometimes they work really, really well. There was a campaign I was reviewing recently. All the templates did terrible, even ones that have been proven to be successful. But what did really well was just the image with the logo in the top right. And that performed better. So my point of saying all of this is, one, you never really know. 2, you got to throw a lot out there. And then, again, shameless plug on my end. Like what our platform does is it breaks down all of your text and image variations and shows you what's performing the best which isn't, and then it automatically moves your budget to the best performers so that you're never putting your budget towards something that's not working as well. And by the way, these were when I mentioned Tim's ads that he wrote that had the best performance. Remember I said ideally you want 1 to 1.5% like click-through rates. His ads that he wrote, this one got 9%, 9.7%. This image, being used got 11%. Like this was crazy. They performed really, really well. And again, but we can look at other campaigns. I'm just gonna hop in and take a look at it. Is there an old one in here? Well, we can look at some Google ads. Let's take a look at Google ads. I don't know what I'm gonna see when I see this, but let's take a look. Let's take a look at optimization. So it can show you what are the best performers. So this is the best performing combination. This is the least performing combination. So whenever we said escape boring education, you know what? That just didn't work as well. But, this was for an online school. So not your typical online school. That performed the best. A+ rated top school for 2024 by Niche. Whenever we use that was a top performer. Personal interactive hands-on Montessori experience, that didn't do as well. And so let me see. I think because this is paused, typically you'll see the performance of each headline, but yeah, we can see a breakdown of keywords where you're getting the most performance keyword wise. So anyway, without, again, I could probably spend 2 days just talking about ads, but for our purposes, Tiffany, you bring up an amazing point, right? You're 100% right. We are all inundated with noise and ads and everything. So that's why creative is more important than ever because of how Meta and Google are working now, and also because we're all distracted. And that's why you want to have, ideally 20+ variations of ads running. So that could be 4 to 5 images, let's say 3 to 4 text variations, right? And so when you do that, you put it out there, you see what works, and then you can make judgment calls when you get the data back. All right. Let's see what else. Well, yeah, that was one of the main things I want to talk about was messaging, because yeah, like I said, messaging and creative is super important. When it comes to creative, by the way, you have 3 options with creative. At least again, I'm going to talk about Meta because you can be more creative. Google, you are very limited in what you do with Google search. With your headlines and your text, you only get so many characters. But with Meta, you've got carousel ads. I'm going to call static images and videos or reels. Test them. Test all 3 of them. I've seen carousels do really, really well. Just so everybody knows what a carousel is, you put like 5 to 10 images in one ad and you can just swipe left and right and you can see the images. I've seen them perform really, really well. I've seen the Tim's best performing ads were just a single static image, but it had a killer headline and the messaging was fantastic. So static images. And I've seen videos do really well. I always get asked the question, how long should the video be? Under 2 minutes. It doesn't have to be 5 seconds. It could be longer. Under 2 minutes though, typically.
So what's the total headcount related to? Yeah.
So I think
It's on my Zoom screen.
from my experience, this is something that my family started advertising private schools back in the 30s when it was considered very uncultured to do that. It was always about, if people don't know you exist, that's their problem. And so we took out, pretty much, yellow pages, display ads, and we sent direct mail and We held public meetings, did all kinds of things. And if you think about today, most schools, even very, very large established boarding and day schools, really have to work hard. I don't know if any of you all are Montessori schools, but again, if there are, you probably face a similar problem. But another issue is it's easy to get people to come in temporarily. Hi, Amanda. Thank you. Very easy to get someone to come in. It's hard to get them to stay. And so finding the right families and working hard, remembering your competition is maybe grandma taking care of the kids for free, or some neighbor who takes in 3 or 4 kids, or the public schools or other private schools, getting people to know you exist and figuring out why you, what do you have to do? The other thing is Clint turned me on a while back to StoryBrand. And if you know what StoryBrand is, it's very interesting. Most of us lead off with talking about how cool we are, our gym, our STEM program, our library, our swimming pool, how the athletic teams are doing, or how wonderful Montessori schools are, right, Amanda? That's not what parents want to hear. Parents have a problem they're trying to solve. And it could be, they want to make friends in town. A lot of people go to private schools because they're looking for a social group for them, not just for their kid. And private schools are communities. So figuring out what problem are your people trying to solve? What's their pain point? What do you have to offer? Why could you help them meet their needs? And who is it you're looking for? Because you don't want to just admit someone in your school. One of the things I do in my life is I get called in as an expert witness in lawsuits. And I can tell you, these days, you do not want to marry in haste or repent at leisure. You want to bring in the right families. And by that, I don't mean being snobby. I do mean knowing what are you good at, who's going to love you for what you are, how can you get their attention, and how can you both tell the truth and form a relationship with these people. That's, by the way, where I think that's what really caught me with Clint, is one is compared to all the other agencies I've worked with in the last 10 years, by far, Clint is the most service for the most affordable price. And I respect that. And I don't own stock in Clint's company.
I'm going to offer it to you though. And Tim had mentioned StoryBrand. I just want to pull this up. If anybody wants to dig into messaging, like you really want to hone your messaging and like how to write really good copy for your website, for your ads. This was one I read years ago. I continue to go back to it. And, if I were building, let's say I was going to build a website today or a landing page, I typically base it around this concept of StoryBrand. It works for any industry. And I just pulled this up because they have a book. That's where I started. I mean, they have other consulting and workshop stuff, as you can imagine. But yeah, StoryBrand, I think, is a really great foundational book to read regarding messaging and telling the story of, your how we serve parents, how we serve your customer, right? It's not about how long you've been around. It's about your families want something and you might have that. And how do you empathize? How do you build authority? How do you separate yourself? So it's a really great book. And there's some other tools, AI tools now they have on the website that we've been playing around with. So yeah, StoryBrand's a good one.
Can I just ask a really quick question? Sorry.
Please.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, is there any value, and maybe this is kind of what story branding is, but is there any value between using like current family stories or current staff profile type stuff as advertising?
I would say that
You know what I mean?
the answer is yes, Amanda.
Okay.
People love it when our alumni come back and say, my years at Aardvark Montessori School were the best years of my life. And, look at who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
And I love telling parents, Google the word Montessori Mafia and realize, how many world famous people went to Montessori schools. And of course, highlighting your faculty, again, you're humanizing your place. So all of that is part of it. in the same way that peer-to-peer referrals, I mean, one of the things that Clint's website does that I didn't know. I mean, as I work with Clint more and more with all the different Montessori and non-Montessori schools, and that I work with, I keep finding things that Clint can do that I didn't know. For example, he has ways of getting referrals and of having parents that are willing to list themselves as brand ambassadors for your school, which works just as well if you're running a parochial school, a Jewish day school, any school. This kind of stuff works. And by the way, just to shamelessly promote the Montessori Foundation, again, we know how to speak more than Montessori because I grew up in Washington, D.C., working with Sidwell Friends and Georgetown Day and St. Albans and Landon. And I know what it's like from the small private preschool that's sort of a daycare all the way up to the biggest Punahous and the really large private day and boarding schools. So we are a consulting group. And I met Clint because he worked for my favorite private school consulting firm, Independent School Management. And like me, he decided to go out on his own and see if he could, they're brilliant and he's brilliant too. And I appreciate what Clint is bringing to the table at a much more affordable price. That's what we.
And oh, sorry, Tim. Yeah, I was just going to say, Amanda, as well, that those stories, alumni stories and teacher stories and parent stories, one, plaster them all over the website. Two, absolutely use them in your ads. I'm trying to think some schools that are using that, but yeah, like testimonials right inside your ad. I'm so glad we chose this school. Have your parents tell those stories. My child was, really unhappy. They felt, lost in a bigger school, and I'm so glad we found this school. Let them say that, like those things that you kind of wish you could kind of say, even, like, hey, here's why we're better, and here's why, families choose us and switch schools. Let your parents say it. So if you don't have them, try to get them. If you have them already, whether they're in video or text form, yeah, get them on your website, use them in your ads, have that as your image, right? So, having an image with just like a quote card with just the testimonial in there, give that a shot. I've seen thinking about a carousel ad. So imagine this: you go see an ad and it's a carousel, and as you keep swiping, it's just another parent after parent talking about how great it is. So think about that as a carousel ad. Now, let me say one other thing just real quick about like reviews and testimonials and things like that. I read a really interesting study about utilizing testimonials in your marketing, that even though we want the words to be like as powerful as they can be, and you want great testimonials, what's actually more important is the volume of testimonials. So let's say you go to a website and there's one testimonial on the page. That could be the greatest testimonial of all time. That may not be as impactful as that same page that has 9 testimonials. So because we all scan things, so we have to pass the scan test. So we scan down, like, wow, like another one, right? So volume of testimonials also plays an important role. And that's why things like carousels, and putting them on your website and landing pages. Like typically we put a minimum of 3 to 6 testimonials on any given page, like when we're building dedicated landing pages. So hopefully that answers your question, but the short answer is yes. The long answer is here's all the different ways that you can then use it. Cool.
Right. Well, again, one of the things that Clint and I have started doing together is helping schools that are interested, refine their message. Because I don't know about you, but it is hard to see yourself the way I can always look at another school and I can help you make more sales much easier than I can necessarily. Well, for example, I called Clint up this morning and said, hey, Clint, I need you to work on my landing pages because I just can't do it for myself. I can do it for anyone else, but not me. And I think you'll find that's true for most things. We're all able to help someone else better. And especially if you've got a knack for it and time on your hands and you know the school or you care to learn about school and help understand who they are and figure out how to find the right message that causes the right people to say, "Oh, I know that school," or I want to know that school." You're trying to draw people in just the way, I guess, suppose I'm not a fisherman. I think it's the idea of what fishermen do with bait, right? Attract the right fish to come into the boat. Pregnant pause. We're
100%.
out of time, Clint. Any last
Yeah.
from anyone, including you, sir?
No, I think it was a good discussion. I mean, like I said, advertising is one of those, man, I've had multi-day workshops on advertising. I feel like there's never enough time to talk about advertising because you can really get into the nitty-gritty with it. But I think, if and I'm gonna just share my screen. If you just keep some of these things in mind, right? About, okay, what's working now? Yeah, hey, let's try to be on as many platforms as possible. Yeah, I mean, Google Performance Max is something to consider. If it's not something you've ever done before, whether you Google it or, feel free to reach out to me. We can always talk about it. Facebook lead forms, if you haven't tried them, give them a try. Like I said, I just keep a close eye on those campaigns, see those families that are coming in, talk with your admissions team. Like this was the call I had this morning with a school where we're running these. I said, okay, we've been running a lot of these, just doing really, really well. Like, what's your show? Like, are these people showing up for tours? Are they jumping on these calls? Are they right fit? And so, and what we said is like they're good, but it's like we're getting a lot maybe that aren't showing up. So we're actually putting more friction. We're adding more questions to add some more friction. So that's why, like, it's not always going to be perfect, but if you want quantity, that's a good place to start. And I would think probably one of the big takeaways here, especially if you're going to do your advertising, is dedicate some time up front to build a lot of creative, because that's the name of the game right now. Do different messages, different hooks. Have one ad that is just testimonials, right? Then the next variation is talking about your outdoor classrooms if you want, right? So you never know kind of what's that thing that's really going to draw families in and catch their attention. So put a lot of creative out there, and test. Always be testing when in doubt. So yeah, certainly if you're interested in, Montessori Foundation, talking with Tim about, he's the master when it comes to messaging. If you're interested in us helping you with your ads or the all-in-one software, please just respond to the email that you got to come here. You go to montessori.org or getames.co, and, we're here to help you on these calls and then, beyond as well.
Yeah. I will say we do a lot more than marketing messaging. So
Oh, 100%.
we're kind of like independent school management with everything from head searches to board development to strategic planning and capital campaigns, whatever. So again, if you ever need a hand, montessori.org is the foundation, and we're probably the most affordable, high quality international school consulting group you'll find. And we speak more than Montessori. So really appreciate everyone coming. I'm so glad to see some new faces. Amanda, tell me what school you're with.
Hi, I'm at Madison Community Montessori School in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin.
Sure. I'm delighted to see you, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you for your help.
Yeah, Tiffany, remind me what school you're with, my friend.
I'm with Mary McDowell Friends School. It's a K through 12 school for kids with learning disabilities in Brooklyn, New York.
Excellent.
Mhm.
It was such an important need. I would love to talk to you at some point, Tiffany. Please don't hesitate. And Catherine, who are you with?
I'm with Falmouth Academy in Falmouth, Massachusetts on Cape Cod. We're a 7 through 12 independent school, and we do work with Ames. And I hopped on this call because our director of communications is leaving, sadly. So I'm kind of going to be Clint's point person for our school.
Taking over the
until she's
reins.
replaced. Yeah, exactly. So I'm like deep diving into Ames these days. But from my very limited experience, it is a fantastic platform. And I know it's been really helpful for our own marketing efforts and widening our funnel.
Oh, that's great. And for the Montessorians in the group, Ames is working with one of my favorite companies, Montessori Compass, which has completely rewritten the software from soup to nuts. And between Montessori Compass and Ames, you've got one of the most affordable alternatives to Blackbaud. It's not going to work for Falmouth Academy because you probably want a more traditional approach. But if you're running a Montessori school, you need to talk to Rob Amos, who owns Montessori Compass, and his brilliant wife, Anita, and talk to Clint because what they're doing is amazing at a price point that I can't believe. So they're going to really make a dent in Montessori MRX and transparent classroom. And I really encourage you take a look at what they're doing.
You say
Yeah, it's
Montessori
gonna be.
Compass, Compass, Compass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, essentially what we're doing, so I was partnering with Montessori. So Montessori Compass does everything, they're enrolled and they're in the classroom and classroom records and recording the day to day for the families. So our platform, we go up to the point of enrollment and we're merging essentially with and partnering with Montessori Compass. So we talked about all in one. Now we truly have an all in one, especially when it comes to for the Montessori schools. So all the way from that first ad to collecting tuition to they get into the classroom and you have one spot to do it all essentially.
And I should say that any school and Tiffany, this might be applicable to you. And Catherine, I wouldn't be surprised these days if it wasn't to you too. What makes this different from, let's say, a typical student information system and a report card system is in Montessori school, kids are learning at their own pace instead of just group lessons from the teachers. And you can do both, but you're tracking individual learning in a way that is unique to special education, Tiffany, which is what you're doing, and it's unique to Montessori. And I think it's the way more and more schools of all sorts are going these days. So I think even though they call it Montessori Compass, I think it's a very powerful software that a lot of schools could use. So I'm very, very fond of what Clint's doing, very fond of my friends at Montessori Compass compared to everything else I've worked with. I'm currently dealing with facts and wanting to pull my hair out. So anyway, bottom line, there's lots of great solutions and lots of great schools, and we're here to help. And we're glad you came, and we're glad you turn your cameras on, lunch or no lunch, and participate because it's meant to be a conversation we have every week. And Catherine, good luck. I know exactly what you're going through. Been there many times. And here to talk anytime.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
It'll be
Thanks,
fun.
everybody.
Thanks, Clint.
It'll be fine. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the week, and then we'll see you next week. Keep your eye on your email for our next topic.
That's right. We have to talk about what's the next topic.
Yep. All right.
Billboards, ads.
Something. There's plenty to talk about. All right,
Bye.
everybody. Take care.
Bye.
All right.
Hold on.